Hello, everyone. This is Reverend Dr. Roger Paul. I'm here with my wife, Reverend Diane Silverhawk, Paul and Millie, and we should have a couple more people joining us. And tonight we're going to study the Urantia Book, paper 85, The Origins of Worship. And that starts on page 944.1 in the original book, or paper 8501 and all the rest of the books. Let's say a little prayer and we'll get started. Father, thank you for such a beautiful day today, and thank you for the opportunity to read this wonderful revelation and share it with others. I pray that you'll bless our reading tonight, open our hearts and minds, that you'll bless us and bless others with this information. We thank you, and we give you your son, you the praise, in the name of your son Michael, Jesus of Nazareth. Amen. I guess I'll start tonight. The Origins of Worship, paper 85. Primitive religion had a biologic origin, a natural evolutionary development, aside from moral associations and apart from all spiritual influences. That's interesting. The higher animals have fears but no illusions, hence no religion. Man creates his primitive religions out of his fears and by means of his illusions. So our primitive religion was out of our fear and illusion on ourselves, right? And that's why they say here the primitive religion had a biological origin, not a spiritual origin. Okay, not from spirit influences. In other words, spirits didn't influence to start thinking about religion. It was a natural evolutionary process of biology. Okay. Millie, would you take number 2, please?
In the evolution of the human species, worship in its primitive manifestations appears long before the mind of man is capable of formulating the more complex concepts of how life now and in the hereafter, which deserve to be called religion. Early religion was wholly intellectual in nature and was entirely predicated on associational circumstances. The objects of worship were altogether suggestive. They consisted of the things of nature which were close at hand, or which loomed large in the commonplace experience of the simple-minded primitive Urantians.
So our idea of religion is we'd attach religion association with anything like trees and plants and stones. And anything we had at hand had a religious connotation to it, right? And we did that out of fear of these things, right? Especially storms and lightning and things like that. All right?
When religion once evolved beyond nature worship, it acquired roots of spirit origin, but was nevertheless always conditioned by the social environment. As nature worship developed, man's concepts envisioned a division of labor in the supermortal world. There were nature spirits for lakes, trees, waterfalls, rain, and hundreds of other ordinary terrestrial phenomena.
So there was a spirit attached to every single thing that they could think of that would come along.
We have all the bases covered.
Yeah, all their bases covered. And what's interesting, we'll find out later on tonight, the Eskimos still attach spirits to all things, like a tree. The tree has a spirit, the water has a spirit, the mountain has a spirit, everything has a spirit. So
Well, it has an essence to it.
it has an essence to it, but they consider it like almost like gods. Right?
Those things that they mention are all things that make us smile.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's
any,
true.
any association we have to it, you know. If you woke up and saw a beautiful day, you know, and the trees were really green, well, the tree spirit was really out there that day, you know. So, okay. At one time or another, mortal man has worshipped everything on the face of the earth, including himself. He has also worshipped about everything imaginable in the sky and beneath the surface of the earth. Primitive man feared all manifestations of power. He worshipped every natural phenomena he could not comprehend. observation of powerful natural forces such as storms, floods, earthquakes, landslides, volcanoes, fire, heat, and cold greatly impressed the expanding mind of man. And the inexplicable things of life are still termed acts of God and mysterious dispensations of providence. Right? So it just makes sense that when Moses went up on the mountain and the people saw all the reflections of the volcano and the fire, what did they think of? It was God, right? Right?
1. Worship of stones and hills. The first object to be worshipped by evolving man was a stone. Today, the Kateri people of southern India still worship a stone, as do numerous tribes in northern India. Jacob sat on the stone because he venerated it. He even anointed it. Rachel concealed a number of sacred stones in her tent.
Okay, they have record of that in the Old Testament, right? When they talk about Rachel. Dear?
Stones first impressed early man as being out of the ordinary because of the manner in which they would so suddenly appear on the surface of a cultivated field or pasture. Men failed to take into account either erosion or the results of the overturning of the soil. Stones also greatly impressed early peoples because of their frequent resemblance to animals. The attention of civilized man is arrested by numerous stone formations in the mountains, which so much resemble the faces of animals and even men. But the most profound influence was exerted by meteorite stones which primitive humans beheld hurtling through the atmosphere in flaming grandeur. The shooting star was awesome to early man, and he easily believed that such blazing streaks marked the passage of a spirit on its way to earth. No wonder men were led to worship such phenomena, especially when they subsequently discovered the meteors. And this led to greater reverence for all other stones. In Bengal, many worship a meteor which fell to the earth in AD 1880.
We all know that the shooting stars, in essence, are meteors, right? They go across the atmosphere. So when these things would happen, it would really impress the local people, okay? And it would impress them even more and make them reverent to them when they would find the source of these things when they hit the earth. You know, they actually found the meteor that fell to the earth. So that's how these things came to be. All ancient clans and tribes had their sacred stones. The most modern peoples manifested a degree of veneration for certain types of stones. They're jewels. A group of 5 stones was reverenced in India. In Greece it was a cluster of 30. Among the red men it was usually a circle of stones. The Romans always threw a stone into the air when evoking Jupiter. In India, even to this day, a stone can be used as a witness. Didn't say a lot, does it? In some religious regions, a stone may be employed as a talisman of the law, and by its prestige, an offender can be held into court. But simple mortals do not always identify deity with the object of their reverent ceremony. Such fetishes are many times mere symbols of the real object of worship.
What happened to Tim?
I'm here.
Oh, yay. Hey, Tim.
How you doing, guys? I'm running late. Sorry,
That's
I just
okay.
got that meeting going on.
That's fine.
Okay?
Glad to have you with us.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here tonight.
Millie, would you take the next one, please?
All ancient clans and tribes had their sacred stones.
No, that's the one we just read. The
I'm
next
sorry.
That's the one that's up there.
I'm sorry.
I
It
can read the book. The ancients had peculiar regard for holes in stones. Such porous rocks were supposed to be unusually efficacious in curing disease. Ears were not perforated to carry stones, but the stones were put in to keep the ear holes open. Even in modern times, superstitious persons made holes in coins. In Africa, the natives make much ado over their fetish stones. In fact, among all backward tribes and peoples, stones are still held in superstitious veneration. Stone worship was even now widespread over the world. The tombstone is a surviving symbol of images and idols which were carved in stone in connection with beliefs in ghosts and spirits of departed beings.
Did y'all know that? The tombstone has its origin in this, which is kind of interesting when you think about it. So now
Well, a
you know.
lot of, today we think tombstone is just, you know, a oval thing squared off at the bottom, stuck on top of the grave, but if you've been to some of the really elegant, famous cemeteries, there's all kinds of statuary that's really elegant. It's more than just a tombstone.
Yeah.
It's a marker of the passing of the person.
That's especially true in Europe, isn't it, Nellie?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. And speaking of stones, coins with holes in them, I came across some coins that I had left over from when I had a bookstore, and I sold things like Chinese stones, coins, and they have a hole in them, and you tie 3 Chinese coins together with a red ribbon for good fortune. So I put those in a little envelope and put them in the boxes for the goodwill. If anybody's gonna want those Chinese, I used to keep one in my wheelbarrow. It seemed to work. I never really broke.
All right. Tim, can you take the next one,
Have we lost you, Tim?
I was gonna say that it's amazing you did that, Millie, because to the Chinese, red is the color of happiness and white is the funeral color.
please?
Well, I didn't think it up. It comes that way, you know. The books that I had on symbols and mystics and good fortune type things, they mentioned the Chinese coin with the hole in it, 3 of them tied together with a red ribbon, specifically a red ribbon, was for good fortune.
Hill worship. I'm getting feedback.
Yeah, I hear it. Can you tell who it's coming
Not
I'll turn my speaker off.
from? Okay.
Hill worship follows stone worship, and the first hills to be venerated were large stone formations. It presently became the custom to believe that the gods inhabited the mountains, so that high elevations of land were worshipped for this additional reason. As time passed, certain mountains were associated with certain gods and therefore became holy. The ignorant and superstitious Aborigines believed that caves led to the underworld with its evil spirits and demons, in contrast with the mountains, which were identified with the later evolving concepts of good spirits and deities.
I wonder if Mount Rushmore in another 2,000 years will people think that's what we thought were gods, you know?
You know, it's amazing they mention that because every time, you know, as a child, as a kid, you go into a cave, and the first thing on my mind is, oh God, I hope the demons don't come out. You ever experienced that?
Yeah. Oh, and you know, not far from Rushmore, the Indian tribes are putting together. Who is it they're putting on the mountain?
they were, he's,
I can't remember.
he's
Is it Iron Horse or something like
yeah,
that?
something like that, but he's already out there.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Not-
huge, he's larger than Rushmore.
Yeah, they had to compete with Rushmore. Yeah. I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah.
2. Worship of plants and trees. Plants were first feared and then worshipped because of the intoxicating liquors which were derived therefrom. Primitive man believed that intoxication rendered one divine.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of divine people around there.
There was supposed to be something unusual and sacred about such an experience. Even in modern times, alcohol is known as spirits. That's true.
That's true. That's where it came from.
That's interesting. I've always had a hard time with seeing spirits on a liquor
Yeah.
store.
So the reason why they label it spirits, Roger, is because you're conjuring up the spirits?
Yeah, well, the reason they label it spirits is because it's supposed to release the spirits within you. You know, when you drink, these spirits come out, and that's why they call it spirits. You know?
Just
And we
the
kn-
unusual behavior or the...
yeah, and we know that's not really spirits, it's just,
Right, but it's the effects of alcohol.
yeah, it's the effects of the alcohol, that's right. All right, Early man looked upon sprouting grain with dread and superstitious awe. The Apostle Paul was not the first to draw profound spiritual lessons from and predicated religious beliefs on the sprouting grain. Who else did that? Jesus did. Remember, the story of the mustard seed in the New Testament?
I'm still in amazement though that you take a little seed and plant it in the ground and it grows, and that people actually know which seeds belong to what.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still amazed by that, it just.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing.
Oh, in Israel, they have all kinds of little things like that. I was watching a documentary. They
Yeah.
have healing herbs, all kinds of stuff. The guy was like, hey, you got a sore throat, you got a stomach problem, here, take this. He's just ripping stuff off the ground and
It's amazing.
It is. All right. Millie, would you take the next one, please?
No, you need to turn the microphone on. You need to turn your microphone on now.
Did we read that early man looked upon sprouting grain with dread and superstitious awe?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did read that one. Okay. The cults of tree worship are among the oldest religious groups. All early marriages were held under the trees, and when women desired children, they would sometimes be found out in the forest, affectionately embracing a sturdy oak. Many plant species were venerated because of their real or fancy medicinal powers. The savage believed that all chemical effects were due to the direct activity of supernatural forces.
How about that? You know, my wife does that every night, embraces a tree as a sturdy oak. Me.
Obviously, you're referring to yourself.
Yeah.
You are my oak honey.
what are you doing, Diana? Are you performing? Would they have what they call in Wicca sky cloud? It's where everybody gathers up and they get naked.
They're gross.
You reckon that's where Apple
Yeah,
got
so you
that
ever
from?
get any to a covenant and they say, hey, would you like to perform? First they probably won't, it's just a joke, but they say, hey, sky cloud tonight. You know what's going down.
That seems like fun.
Yeah. Jim, would you take the next one?
Ideals about tree spirits varied greatly among different tribes and races. Some trees were dwelt by kindly spirits, others harbored the deceptive and cruel. The Finns believed that most trees were occupied by kind spirits. The Swiss long mistrusted the trees, believing they contained tricky spirits. The inhabitants of India and eastern Russia regard the tree spirits as being cruel. The Patagonians still worship trees, as did the early Semites. Long after the Hebrews ceased tree worship, they continued to venerate their various deities in the groves, except in China. There once existed a universal cult of the tree of life.
And don't forget the Christmas tree, right? That was not an original Christian idea either.
Did the Hebrews worship the tree, right?
Yeah, and
Because
the Tree of Life cult started out from the stories of the Garden of Eden and the Tree of Life, life, right? And so they took a hold of that, and then that eventually became the cult of the Tree of Life.
Yeah, this one individual who used to be a Christian who converted to Hebrew, what do they call it? Hebraic roots, studying Christians about the pagan rituals like Easter,
Christmas, really.
right? Yeah, Christmas and all basically our American holidays. And
Yeah.
that right there just blows it up.
Yeah, it's really funny that the early Christians started celebrating Christmas not originally because of Christ's birthday. They really didn't know when Christ was born back then. So they picked the tree holiday as the day they would celebrate Christ's birthday, and that's how the Christmas tree got associated with Christ's birthday. So and they couldn't get them to stop celebrating the tree holiday, so they just replaced it with Christmas.
Now we do it with Christmas lights.
Now we do it at Christmas lights, that's right.
Put them anywhere.
That's right. Dear?
And they wrap their lights around the trees. The belief that water or precious metals beneath the earth's surface can be detected by a wooden
Divining.
divining rod is a relic of the ancient tree cults. The maypole, the Christmas tree, and the superstitious practice of wrapping on wood perpetuate certain of the ancient customs of tree worship and the later day tree cults.
Ah, you know. Many of these earliest forms of nature veneration became blended with the later evolving techniques of worship, but the earliest mind adjutant activated types of worship will function long before the newly awakening religious nature of mankind became fully responsive to the stimulus of spiritual influence. So, in other words, the adjutant mind spirit of worship and wisdom was working long before mankind actually started responding to the spiritual influences. All right? It was around long time before that. All right? Millie.
The worship of animals. Primitive man had a peculiar and fellow feeling for the higher animals. His ancestors had lived with them and even mated with them.
Yeah.
In southern Asia, it was early believed that the souls of men came back to earth in animal form. This belief was a survival of the still earlier practice of worshiping animals.
There you go. You remember the story about Andon and Fonta? And how some of the more primitive beings of that time, their descendants, went back to mating with the primates. That's what they're talking about, right?
Roger.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey, Rodney.
Oh,
Hey, Rodney.
We're on the last paragraph, Rodney. You want to read it? No, I'm joking.
it's a very short paper.
It's short. Hi, Rodney.
I don't see.
hey, I was gonna say,
Okay.
yesterday, in the last week, you'll believe that, the people come back as ravens.
That's right. That's right. Remember when we were there, they talked about that?
Come back as
As ravens.
well. Oh, ravens, yeah.
You remember the lady that had the raven
Yes.
outfit?
Yes, I
You
remember.
know, did the dance
Well,
thing?
they believe it's still,
Yes, the people of India, Rodney, actually believe in transmigration of the soul, meaning that their soul will be indwelt, in an animal based on the life that they maybe have lived. If you're, somebody that's greedy and always eating, you could be a pig or etc.
I'm just glad I never came back as a cockroach.
Funny thing is, I can't remember any of my transmigrations.
That's probably because there weren't any.
Exactly, Roger, you nailed it.
You got it.
I was hoping somebody would catch that.
Rodney, we're on section 3, the second paragraph.
look at it,
All right, you want to read that paragraph?
okay, early men revered the animals for their power and their cunning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. They thought the clean sin and the foreseen lives of certain creatures betokened spirit guidance. Animals have all been worshipped by one race or another at one time or another. Among such objects of worship were creatures that were regarded as half human and half animal, such as centaurs and mermaids.
How about that? You think about it, we still reverend the eagle in this country.
Yeah, we did.
So it starts jumping around. Here,
The Hebrews worshipped serpents down to the days of King
Ezekiel.
Ezekiel, and the Hindus still maintain friendly relations with their housemates. The Chinese worship of the dragon as a survival of the snake cults. The wisdom of the serpent was a symbol of Greek medicine and is still employed as an emblem by modern physicians. The art of snake charming has been handed down from the days of the female shamans of the snake love cult, who, as a result of daily snake bites, became immune. In fact, became genuine venom addicts and could not get along without this poison.
That really does sound good. The worship of insects and other animals was promoted by a later misinterpretation of the Golden Rule, doing to others every form of life as you would be done by you. The ancients once believed that all winds were produced by the wings of birds, and therefore both feared and worshipped all winged creatures. The early Nordics thought that eclipses were caused by a wolf that devoured a portion of the sun or moon. The Hindus often show Vishnu with a horse's head. Many times an animal symbol stands for a forgotten god or a vanished cult. Early in evolutionary religion, the lamb became the typical sacrificial animal, and the dove the symbol of peace and love, which is an interesting point here because the dove was often sacrificed also, and it was considered a symbol of peace and love. We're going to talk about sacrifice later in one of the upcoming papers too. Millie?
In religion, symbolism may be either good or bad just to the extent that the symbol does or does not displace the original worship idea. And symbolism must not be confused with direct idolatry, wherein the material object is directly and actually worshipped.
Okay. Well, you know that's not good, right? Moses had that problem with the people. Tim, would you take the next one?
Yes, when they say symbolism, what are they talking about again?
Symbolism, they believe the object to be the embodiment of their God. That God.
Right. That's like in the New Testament where Paul is talking about how if you take food, that have been sacrificed to the gods,
Yeah.
aren't really, I just forgot what I was going to say. Basically, worshiping their God, you're just, since you know Jesus Christ within your heart and God is one,
Right.
you're not partaking in that sacrifice. Okay.
That's
I got
right.
it.
That's right. And if you think about it, Tim, when up to the 19th century, up until the Urantia book, really, when we celebrated the Last Supper, instead of using the symbolism that Christ recommended for the symbolism of the Last Supper, many religions taught that when you ate the bread, you were consuming the body of Christ, and the wine was the blood of Christ. And if you
That's
think
correct.
if you think about it, that's exactly wrong what they're saying here, right? You should never idolize or worship something as a place of God or His Son, either one, right? The symbolism of the Last Supper was in remembrance of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. That's what the Last Supper was about, right?
That was well said because I've never really thought about it like that.
Yeah,
But the one quote that I do remember from that paper is, "This shall be the cup of my remembrance." I always remember that because it's something sacred to me.
that's right. It's the cup of remembrance, right? The cup of remembrance of the sacrifices that Christ made for us all. Not that He was sacrificed for our sins, but the sacrifice He gave upon Himself for the whole universe, right? His whole creation. And that's what the sacrifice, that was the remembrance,
Yeah,
right?
because when you think about it, man and woman have been pretty much programmed. They've been taught, and that's why we have the revelation today to correct us and to get rid of the confusion.
That's right, that's right.
Go ahead.
Tim, go ahead.
Okay, 4, worship of the elements. Mankind has worshipped earth, air, water, and fire. The primitive races venerated springs and worshipped rivers. Even now in Mongolia, there flourishes an influential river cult. Baptism became a religious ceremony in Babylon, and the Greeks practiced the annual ritual bath. It was easy for the ancients to imagine that these spirits dwelt in the bubbling springs, gushing fountains, flowing rivers, and raging torrents. Moving waters vividly impress these simple minds with beliefs of spirit animation and supernatural powers. Sometimes a drowning man would be refused. How do you pronounce that?
I think it's sacral.
Sacral, for fear of offending some river guy. You know, this reminds me of a man in India I once heard who said that if he saw a man drowning, he would not interfere because he believes that that is his karma.
Yeah. And what they're saying here is people wouldn't even just throw him a rope. I mean, they wouldn't help him get out of the water because they're afraid they would offend the river god, even though they want to keep somebody from drowning. So that's not a good thing, you know.
I say that man's a coward and he should help his brother.
Yeah.
Me too.
Really. All right. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Sure. Many things and numerous events have functioned as religious stimuli to different peoples in different ages. A rainbow is yet worshipped by many of the hill tribes of India. In both India and Africa, the rainbow is thought to be a gigantic celestial snake. Hebrews and Christians regard it as the pole of promise. Likewise, the influences regarded as beneficial. This year, in one part of the world, may be looked upon as malignant in other regions. The east wind is a god in South Africa. For
South America.
South America. For it brings rain. In India, it is a devil because it brings dust and causes drought. To Bedouins
Yeah.
believe that the nature spirit produced the sand of the land. And even in times of Moses' belief in nature spirits was strong enough to ensure the perpetuation in Hebrew theology as angels of fire, water, and air.
Okay, let's go back a little bit. You know what the bow of promise is?
Yes, I do.
Yes, it's in Genesis, where God promised not to destroy the earth. That would be his sign,
That's
the rainbow.
right after the flood, great flood, right?
He promised not to destroy it by rain again. Next time it would be.
That's right. That's right.
That was well said, Rodney.
That was the bow of problem. And we know that there was no great flood, right? Not when humans were here anyway. The world was covered in water, but there weren't any humans on it when it was that way. We know that's a myth, but this bow of promise came from a Hebrew myth, right? Basically, that God wouldn't destroy the earth with rain anymore, or with water. Okay?
We still call it swirling clouds of dust devils.
Yeah, and down in the Keys when I lived there, you know, the swirls on the water are called water spouts. You know, not tornadoes. They look like tornadoes, but they're water spouts. It's the air sucking the water up into the clouds. It's kind of interesting.
Clouds, rain, and hail have all been feared and worshipped by numerous primitive tribes and by many of the early nature cults. Windstorms with thunder and lightning overawed early man. He was so impressed with these elemental disturbances that thunder was regarded as the voice of an angry god. The worship of fire and the fear of lightning were linked together and were widespread among many early groups.
And I always thought it was the gods playing bowling up in heavens. All this stuff. So that's what we were told as kids.
I never heard that
The
before.
gods bowling in heaven. You know, that's what the thunder is.
God did what in heaven?
Bowling.
Bowling.
Yeah,
Bowling.
bowling.
That's exactly what I used to think as a kid too. When you heard the thunder, you always think, God, it's always in reference to him bowling.
That's right.
Thunder rolls.
That's right.
Thunder rolls, you can hear a roll that goes on.
That's right. It rolls down and then the crashes them hitting the pins, right?
Right.
Fire was mixed up with magic in the minds of primitive, fear-ridden mortals. A devotee of magic will vividly remember one positive chance result in the practice of his magic formulas, while he nonchalantly forgets a score of negative results, out-and-out failures. Fire reverence reached its height in Persia, where it long persisted. Some tribes worshiped fire as a deity itself. Others revered it as the flaming symbol of the purifying and purging spirit of their venerated deities. Vestal virgins were charged with the duty of watching sacred fires, and in the 20th century candles still burn as a part of the ritual of many religious services. Catholics still do that, right?
Well, it's in remembrance of your
Yeah,
person that passed.
yeah. All right, Millie, would you take the next one, please?
If you turn your microphone on, I know you are, I can see your lips moving.
The worship of heavenly bodies, the worship of rocks, hills, trees, and animals naturally developed up through fearful veneration of the elements to the deification of the sun, moon, and stars. In India and elsewhere, the stars were regarded as the glorified souls of great men who had departed from the life in the flesh. The Chaldean star cultists considered themselves to be the children of the Sky Father and the Earth Mother.
Interesting.
You know, that sounds just like the Native Americans where they say Father Sky and Mother Earth.
Mother Earth, yeah, that's true. Tim, the next one.
Oh, am I up?
Yep, you're up.
Moon worship preceded sun worship. Veneration of the moon was its height during the hunting era, while sun worship became the chief religious ceremony of the subsequent agriculture ages. Solar worship first took extensive root in India, and there it persisted the longest. In Persia, sun veneration gave rise to the later Mithra cult. Among many peoples, the sun was regarded as the ancestor of their kings. The Chaldeans put the sun in the center of the seven circles of the universe. Later civilizations honored the sun by giving its name to the first day of the week.
Very interesting.
Interesting, they had 7 circles.
Yeah, the seven circles, that, you know where that came from was, from
The planets?
Huh? No,
Was
it
that
came,
from the planets?
no, it came from the teachings of,
Melchizedek?
no, it was the Dalmatians, okay? They told the people about paradise and the 7 orbs around paradise, and then the 7 spirits, and then the 7 super universes, and the 4 universes after that. So all together that made seven. Okay, so that's where the 7 circles of the universe came from.
You know, it makes me think of chakras, which just means wheel in Sanskrit, but there's 7 of them.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that word 7, boy, that's associated with all kinds of stuff.
all
And you
sorts
can
of-
read about that in paper 16.
That's right. That's right. Rodney, would you take the next one, please?
Sure. The sun god was supposed to be the mystic father of the virgin-born son of destiny, whoever the man were thought to be bestowed as favorers or favored races. These supernatural infants were always built with drift upon some sacred river to be rescued in an extraordinary manner, after which they were brought to become miraculous personalities and the deliverers of their people.
Who does that sound like? Moses, right? And that's exactly during the period of Moses when the Pharaoh was trying to switch them over to the sun god, right? Because he couldn't get them to stop worshiping all these other gods. So he tried to make everybody worship the sun god, and of course he was killed for it.
You know, in India too, they also worship Mother Ganga, which would be the Ganges rivers,
Yeah.
which flow through the, God, what do you call it? Tibet or something like that?
Tibet, yeah. I hate to put these words in the same sentence up here.
So Rodney's turn?
No, it's yours.
Mine? 6, worship of
Wait a
man.
minute, did Rodney just read
I
that?
don't think so.
Well, it's
Yeah, I
right.
do.
You do, I'm sorry, Rodney, I must have been somewhere else. Pardon me. I was just, sometimes you just, some of these thoughts you have when you read this. you
Yeah, I
remember.
was completely lost too. Then I was like,
Yeah.
where are we?
Yeah.
Ganges River, I don't know.
Where you start imagining.
Yeah, it's a visualization,
Yeah, my mind is just thinking about all this stuff, trying to take it in.
yeah. Evolutionary process. 6, worship of man. Having worshipped everything else on the face of the earth and in the heavens above, man has not hesitated to honor himself with such adoration. The simple-minded savage makes no clear distinction between beasts, men, and gods.
So, worshiping men too. Remember the Caesars? They wanted to be worshipped, right? Early men regarded all unusual persons as superhuman, and so feared such beings as to hold them in reverential awe to some degree. He literally worshipped them. Even having twins was regarded as being either very lucky or very unlucky. Lunatics, epileptics, and feeble-minded were often worshipped by their normal-minded fellows who believed that such abnormal beings were indwelt by the gods. Priests, kings, and prophets were worshipped. The holy men of old were looked upon as inspired by deities.
Hey, Roger,
Yeah.
what does the feeble-minded mean? I understand lunatics and epileptics, but what is feeble-minded?
In other words, they're not quite all there.
Okay.
They don't have the natural reaction to sentences as other people. Slow, in other words. Here? Interrupt?
Tribal chiefs died and were deified. Later distinguished souls passed on and were sainted. Unaided evolution never originated gods higher than the glorified, exalted, and evolved spirits of deceased humans. In early evolution, religion creates its own gods. In the course of revelation, the gods formulate religion. Evolutionary religion creates its gods in the image and likeness of mortal man. Revelatory religion seeks to evolve and transform mortal man into the image and likeness of God.
Well, they're talking about revelation. They're talking about the epical revelations, right? Which we know as the Dalmatian 100, right? Adam and Eve, Melchizedek, Christ, and this book, right?
So notice the word here, revelatory versus revelation.
Right.
So it's referred to as revelatory religion versus revelation religion.
That's right.
But
Revelatory
there
is
such a
anything
thing
that's
called revelation religion, right? Where
What?
people do make predictions or what, how it's being revealed.
no. They're talking about revealed religion by the 5 epical revelations.
Correct.
Okay.
But is there a such thing as a person that receives revelation? Is it genuine? Or is it true? Or is it false?
I mean, talking about being a prophet or
like
prophetic.
a prophet.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah.
It's in reference to a prophet. I see.
Yeah, if you revealed something, like, a revelation that you believe is a revelation, you would be considered a prophet, not a
Okay.
revelatory.
Thank you.
I think a revelatory is much higher.
Yeah.
Oh, much higher. Yes.
Yeah. Who's up?
I just read.
Israel?
You.
All right, I'm gonna pass and let Millie read. Millie, would you take the next one?
The ghost gods, who are of supposed human origin, should be distinguished from the nature gods, for nature worship did evolve a pantheon, nature spirits elevated to the position of God. The nature cults continued to develop along with the latter appearing ghost cults, and each exerted an influence upon the other. Many religious systems embrace the dual concept of deity, nature gods and ghost gods. In some theologies, these concepts are confusingly intertwined, as is illustrated by Thor, a ghost hero who is also master of the lightning.
See, they believe Thor was killed and died and came back as a god. He could control lightning. So he was a nature god and a ghost god. You see. It was actually a myth.
Now he's a man.
Now he's a TV.
No, he's a
That
TV
was the
star.
guys on the big screen.
That's right. Very good looking guy with big muscles.
Yes, he is. He's blonde.
All right. Tim. Before we get too far off track.
But the worship of man by man reached its height when temporal rulers commanded such veneration from their subjects and, in substantiation of such demands, claimed to have descended from deity.
Who did that? The Caesars.
Caesars.
That's right.
And what about like all these other individuals from the East? Like the Chinese, you know, the emperor worship?
Yeah, the same principle.
The
Same.
Egyptians also
Yeah.
call themselves gods.
All right. Rodney, I think you're next.
Okay, 7, the adjectives of worship and worship. Nature worship may seem to have arisen naturally and spontaneously in the minds of primitive men and women, and so it did. But there was, operating all this time in these same primitive minds, the sixth adjutant spirit, which had been bestowed upon these peoples as a directing influence of this phase of human evolution. And the spirit was constantly stimulating the worship urge of the human species, no matter how primitive its first manifestations might be. The spirit of worship gave definite origin to the human impulse to worship, notwithstanding that animal fear motivated the expressions of worshipfulness, and that its early practice became centered upon objects of nature.
So we know the sixth adjutant is the spirit of worship, and the seven, wisdom, right? What they're saying here is the sixth adjutant was influencing these early people, moving them towards worship, right? Even though it was fear that actually made them get into the worshipful stage out of fear. Okay? But that does not take away from the sixth adjutant at all.
So these experiences were important
Yes,
for them to be able to get to where we are today,
that's
correct?
exactly correct.
It's part of the evolutionary cycle
Process, that's
process,
right.
yeah.
You know, I had a question for you I've been wanting to ask you for a while, Roger.
Yeah,
I've been doing some research and hearing a lot of documentaries and MP3s on near-death experiences.
yeah.
Do you have an opinion about that?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it, in my opinion, is foresight. Do you understand what I'm saying? Foresight.
What does
Foresight.
foresight mean?
Foresight, in essence, is being able to see something in the not too distant future. Okay, that's what you would call foresight. And many people, because of the stressful nature of the situation, whenever you become near death or associated with death, the stress of that basically, in essence, opens the veil to your eyes. Okay? Many people see angels, many people, I was just counseling a friend of mine that's dying. He's in, what do you call it?
Hospice.
Hospice right now, dying. But I had a discussion with him this week about, we know he was going to die. It's inevitable. He's 96 years old. And I said he's prepared himself for his death, so he knows that sometime soon he's going to go on to the mansion worlds, you know. And I told him many times, right before death, it's like this veil is lifted from your eyes and you're able to see your guardian angels. And many people see their guardian angels reaching out to them, and they reach their hand out and touch their guardian angel, and the next thing they know, they're on the mansion world, right? And I think what many of these near-death experience is the foresight of this experience, because what happens, as soon as you touch that angel's hand, you immediately go unconscious. And the next conscious thought you have is what? Waking up and seeing your family. And this is the same thing that we hear over and over and over again for people that's come near death, right? They see their family, they see a light they want to go towards. That's probably either Jesus or the guardian angel. And it's the same experience all these people have. You don't have people telling about a near-death experience where they think they see the devil. You know, that just doesn't happen. You know?
Well, see, to me too, it seems like the near-death experience is something that's also personal, but yet it does lead you, because most describe either a light or a figure, and yet then you have these Christians that are talking about, oh, you know, I was 23 minutes or 15 minutes in hell, and hell does exist, I was there. So, you know, people meeting Buddha and then, you know, meeting Muhammad, peace be upon him, not to mention how people are, you know, seeing Jesus, but the thing of it is, it seems to be like one Buddhist, said that he saw, you know, Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, that was in one of them. But it seems like death is a very personal experience, but yet
And
it does lead you to what they're talking about in the Revelation, you know, like the mansion worlds and seeing your loved ones and then, you know, seeing God. But
yeah,
they're
and
all
your concept of God will determine who it is you think you see too.
That's correct.
You know, if you're a Buddhist, who would you want to see?
The picture
You would want to see Buddha.
that I'm holding up.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have,
Yes, we see it.
I have a friend who fell on the ice and hit her head and went home and told her mother she didn't feel good, and her mother put her to bed, and she was gone for a while. And when she became an adult, she remembered where she was. This is her in the garden with the light.
There you go.
Wow.
You see this painting, she assures me that she painted flowers, but everybody that looks at this says, oh, that's people. But you can see people. It's not just flowers. She said, no, I painted flowers. And I said, you don't think you painted flowers, but you painted people. And she started, as an adult, when she could remember where she was.
Yeah, she brought it back. See? And an interesting think about this, that is this.
I think she was questioned, and she said her mother needed it.
Yeah, well, you know, when people have an experience like that, it doesn't matter how long they're gone, because there is no time. See, that's where we miss the boat. If someone's out 30 minutes or even an hour and then they come back, it doesn't matter, because the time aspect of that does not exist after death. Okay? So to them, it would seem like an instant thing. And to us, if they come back and say, well, I was gone about 30 minutes, it's because they have projected that amount of time on this vision that they had. They feel like it's been that long. And it's just like a dream. When you have a dream does not last but a split of a quarter of a second. Okay? And you might have a really long dream, but it only lasts a quarter of a second. That's the way it works. But in your dream, it seems like it goes on forever. You know what I'm saying? So,
You know, people have these experiences, are very respectful, and the best thing you can do is be a willing learner and listen, and not be judgmental or criticizing like some religious people.
Yeah.
But,
That's true.
you know, I ask this question because you hear about these people seeing Jesus and you think, well, wait a second. The Revelation tells me that I'm not going to get to see Jesus until I reach Southington.
yeah.
So what's going on here? Is death very, very personal?
Well,
to
it's-
where when that person dies, hey, you know, that's his experience, but it does lead up to a paradise, etc. So
That's
that's my
right.
question.
Yeah,
Why is that different?
it's a vision. It's like I said, it's foresight or a vision that they have. Just like the apostle John, when he wrote the book of Revelation, do you think they really took him up to the heavens? I mean, to the mansion worlds to see all this? Not likely, because the trip itself we know takes 3 days, and John wasn't out for 3 days, right? So they blessed him with a vision, and it's like a dream that lasted in a very compact period of time. Okay? So he was blessed to see the vision of Revelation. But do you really think that he was really transported to the mansion world, knowing it takes a guardian angel at top speed 3 days to get there, right? So we know that John was not taken up to the heaven because there's no record of John being in a coma for 3 days, right?
So the one thing I also keep within my mind is that you have a divine fragment, a piece of the universal Father
That's right.
dwelling within your mind. So of course, something fantastic and great is going to happen because of that piece.
That's
and I'm
right.
wondering if the adjuster provides that experience, like you're talking about, a vision or, and yeah, that's great. It makes perfect sense to me, Roger. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that very well.
Yeah, that was well said.
Really.
Because like I said, you wonder why everybody's got such a different experience, and it really comes down to that different spiritual level and development and understanding. But why people see a hell, do you know why people see a hell, Roger? Is it based on their beliefs?
It's based on their beliefs, and it's based on the disturbance within their soul of a problem they're wrestling with. Okay? And basically, it's just wrong thinking. That's what it boils down to. They've been taught their whole lives from when they're little kids till they get to be grown adults by all these churches that there's hellfire and brimstone and God's angry at you and He's going to send you to hell and you're going to burn forever and all that. How do I know this? It's the same thing I used to preach, and I believed it when I preached it. But when I got enlightened by the Urantia book, all those fairy tales went away. Okay? And so the problem is this. These ideas and these concepts get seeded in these young people and these children and even in adults. And when they're distressed or under pressure or lack of understanding about something, what do? They go back to those early teachings. And they start to embrace that concept of hell. I've been bad. I've been guilty. I'm going to end up in hell. I'm going to be tortured forever. Okay? And it's just not true. So that's why I consider it wrong thinking. It's an unenlightened thinking, and they don't know any better most of the time. Okay, so that's why it's our responsibility to teach everyone about the Urantia book, about the mansion rules, and teach them that there is no everlasting punishment. It doesn't work that way.
Well, that's why the evolutionary process is emphasized. That's really just major liberation.
Yeah.
Because you realize, of course, we're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
We can't evolve and not make mistakes.
We're
because
children.
We are. We are actually children.
Yeah.
Growing. So.
Yeah.
Well, that was well said, Roger, and thank you so much because
Sure.
that really answered my question. So thank you.
All right. Let me get this last paragraph
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Did we do the one before this?
I don't know. Let me see. You must read the film. No, we did not read it.
Okay, let me go back and you read that one. I thought you read it. Oops. Sorry. There you go.
You must remember that feeling, not thinking, was the guiding and controlling influence in all evolutionary development. To the primitive mind, there is little difference between fearing, shunning, honoring, and worshiping.
There you go. Very little difference. Okay. When the worship urge is admonished and directed by wisdom, that's why the two go together, right? Meditative and experiential thinking, it then begins to develop into the phenomena of real religion. When the seventh adjutant spirit, the spirit of wisdom, achieves effective ministration, then in worship man begins to turn away from nature and natural objects to the God of nature and to the eternal creator of all things natural. Presented by a brilliant evening star of Lebanon.
And I just wanted to mention that if you take the time and read a book called How God Changes Your Brain, it is the most fascinating book because it's trying to prove to you that, God does exist, but yet, contemplating a loving God rather than a punitive God reduces anxiety, depression, and stress, and increases feelings of security, compassion, and love, versus, your fundamentalism in and of itself is begun and can be personally beneficial, but the anger and prejudice generated by extreme beliefs can permanently damage your brain.
Scar
So people
in
that
this.
are very dogmatic and hardcore will be more, depressed, anxiety, stress levels, and will, what he was just saying, can damage your brain, literally.
Yeah.
What was the
really.
name of that book again, Tim?
How God Changes Your Brain by Andrew Newtonberg, MD, and then Mark Robert Waldman. How God Changes Your Brain. He's a neuroscientist, and the information here is just incredible. It's fascinating because, he's talking about prayer. He's talking about the dogmatic beliefs and how it can damage your brain. He's talking about how just all kinds of neat stuff.
Takes a scientific approach to it.
Yeah, it's a scientific one, and
Yeah.
he was a skeptic, but and they do stuff like what God feels like, what does God look like, does God have a heart, just all kinds of neat little
Yeah.
topics there.
Well, Rodney, would you like to close us in prayer tonight, sir?
Here, Heavenly Father, we give thanks from each one of us for this opportunity that we have had to come together this evening to study the Ranching, specifically origins of worship. And we pray for guidance and wisdom and insight to discern these truths and understand it better so that we can pass this knowledge on to other truth seekers. And Father, we especially pray for our elected officials and judges that they might make the right decisions during these hard times. And we do all of this in your name, Father. Your will be done. Amen.
Amen. And thank you at home for joining us. Please come see us again. This is a short meeting tonight. Huh? Oh, good one. Good one.